We positioned ourselves on opposite sides of the fitting at the start of the 11-second count. I want to record the setup precisely because the positioning was deliberate, and the deliberateness matters. This was not an improvised approach. We had enough documentation from the previous sessions to know the geometry, the orientation requirements, the interval pacing. We were not guessing. We took positions that the fitting's guidelines indicated, and we matched our key orientations to the amber arcs, and we waited for the interval to tell us when to begin. Hannah on the north side of the fitting, key 47, flat in her right palm, bow upward, blade down. She was holding it the way I had described placement orientation during the orientation mapping session. She had practiced the grip on the transit back from the offshore structure. I had seen her doing it on the Morwenna's deck without commenting on it, getting the weight of the key settled in her hand before she needed it to be right. I was on the south side with the second key, the altered key, the one that has been sitting differently in the canvas bag since we left the offshore structure's influence. I had it flat in my left palm, bow upward, blade toward the fitting, and I was aware of the quality I have been trying to describe since the Morwenna, the readiness, the pending direction, more clearly now than at any previous moment. The key was oriented toward the fitting, and it was doing something a key should not be able to do, which was to feel oriented, to feel as though it knew where it was pointing and had been waiting to point there. I note that carefully and move on. Marin was behind me, slightly to the south and east, outside the placement geometry. She had not been asked to step back. She had positioned herself there without instruction, the same way she positions herself at thresholds, present, observing, outside the active zone. I did not look at her. I was watching the amber guidelines in the fitting. The stone vibration was running underfoot. 11 seconds. The amber guidelines brightened when Hannah and I both moved within 60 centimeters of the fitting. Not dramatically, a degree of intensity rather than a new behavior. The arcs that had been faintly warm in color became clearly warm, a light coming from inside the incisions that had a source depth rather than a surface glow. The center mass point between the two key positions brightened most. I noted this without moving. Hannah noted it too. I could see her register it in the way she adjusted her focus from the key to the stone and back. The guide arcs correspond to blade alignment. Each key has a matching arc in the amber geometry, one on the north side of the fitting, one on the south. The arcs converge toward the center mass point and stop there. The center itself, the point between us, between the keys, between the two guide arcs, is not lit. The amber runs up to it and stops, as though the center point is defined by where the light ends rather than where it begins. I count the interval under my breath. 11 seconds. Hannah is counting too. I can tell from the small stillness she goes into when she is tracking a rhythm, a slight regularizing of her breathing, her attention distributed between the key and the count and the stone below her. We go in on the next cycle. The movement is slow. This is not a thrust or an insertion. The fitting is a space above the stone surface, not a hole in it. The placement geometry is a zone defined by the guidelines, and what we are doing is bringing the keys into that zone and holding them there. The keys do not touch the stone. They occupy the space the stone has defined. I bring the second key forward and down, following the amber arc that corresponds to the south position. The arc runs from the outer edge of the fitting toward the center mass point, and as I track the blade along the arc's implied line, the amber light responds, brighter where the blade is closest to the guide. A feedback loop so subtle I might have missed it if I had not been watching for exactly this. The key is reading the arc, or the arc is reading the key. Hannah brings key 47 into the north position on the same count. She is slower than I am by about 1 beat, deliberate, I think, checking her alignment against the guide before committing to the position. When both keys are inside the geometry, the amber light runs the full length of both arcs simultaneously for the first time. The fitting is complete in 2 of its 3 dimensions. The stone vibration deepens, not louder, lower. A frequency that drops below what I can hear and becomes something I feel through the soles of my boots and up through my legs. The interval is still 11 seconds, but the character of it is different. The way the character changed when I reached placement orientation during the mapping session. Heavier, more present. The stone acknowledging the configuration. I do not move. Hannah does not move. We hold. The device, in the canvas bag behind me where I set it before we positioned, produces a single clear tone, not the oscillation, not the directional behavior, a stable note. The witness state I have been calling passive. It is not passive in this moment. It is attending. The next 11-second cycle completes. The mark begins on the cycle after that. I want to describe this carefully because it does not look like what I expected, and what I expected was based on the guideline self-completion I witnessed in episode 67, which happened rapidly and was clearly a surface event. This is different. The stone does not etch. It does not burn. The surface does not discolor or fracture. Instead, along the line of the southern guide arc, my arc, the arc corresponding to the second key, the material separates. That is the closest description I have. A seam opens along the guide geometry, not from any external force, not from any contact between the key and the stone, but from inside the material itself. The same logic as the watch number 1 photograph, information preserved within a substrate rather than printed on its surface. The mark is not being cut from the outside, it is emerging from the inside. The seam follows the guide arc precisely. Southern half first, then simultaneously the northern arc begins, Hannah's arc, and both halves of the mark form together, mirroring each other. 2 curves descending from the outer edges of the fitting toward the center mass point. The geometry is symmetrical. I can see immediately that the 2 halves are reflections. Whatever the mark is meant to be, it has a bilateral symmetry, a form that requires both sides to be present to make sense. 2 arcs descending toward a shared point. The amber light follows the cut as it forms. The incisions glow as they open, the same warm amber as the guidelines, the same depth of source, as though the system that has been waiting to write this mark is the same system that prepared the fitting, the same material intelligence, the same language. I hold position. Hannah holds position. The stone works. Interval, interval, interval. Each cycle deepens the cut by a small increment, not uniform. The outer sections of each arc deepen faster than the sections closer to the center. The mark is forming from outside toward center, the opposite of how the fitting was prepared from center outward. The stone prepared from the inside out and wrote from the outside in. I count cycles. After the 3rd cycle, the outer arcs are fully formed, clean, precise, the same cutting quality as the organized marks in the syntax section to our right. This is the same hand that made those marks, the same system. The consequence mark is written in the same vocabulary as the sentence it completes. After the 5th cycle, the arcs are 3/4 of their full depth. The center sections are forming now, the geometry narrowing as both halves descend toward the center mass point. The amber light at the center mass point is the brightest it has been since the illumination began. The point where the 2 arcs will meet, should meet, is lit from below as though something is waiting just beneath the stone's surface at that exact location. After the 6th cycle, the arcs have nearly reached the center. After the 7th cycle, nothing changes. I count 11 seconds. Nothing changes. 11 seconds again. The mark has stopped. I do not move immediately. Hannah does not move. We hold the configuration for 2 more full cycles, watching the stone, waiting for the cutting to resume. It does not resume. The amber light holds, does not dim, does not brighten, and the stone vibration continues its 11-second count, and the device tone maintains its witness note, and the mark sits in the stone exactly as it is. 2 arcs. symmetrical, each descending from the outer edge of the fitting toward the center, each stopping approximately 4 centimeters short of the center mass point. The center mass point between them is untouched, smooth. The stone there is exactly as it was before we began. No incision, no separation, no amber emergence. The point that has been brightest throughout the entire process, the point the guide geometry converges toward, the point the two arcs are descending toward, is the one point the mark has not reached. I step back from the fitting. The amber guidelines do not change. The stone vibration continues. The mark remains half-formed. Hannah steps back too. She looks at the fitting from a slight distance, the way she looks at chart geometry when she is identifying structure. She does not speak yet. She is reading it. Marin says from behind us, "The system records what it has." Not a consolation, a procedural observation. The same matter-of-fact delivery she gives everything. The system recorded the placement. The system recorded the 2 keys in the correct geometry. The system began writing the consequence. The system has what it has, and it is keeping that record, and it is continuing to run the interval. It did not fail. It paused. I look at the half-cut mark, the 2 descending arcs, the smooth center between them. I look at the center mass point and the amber light rising from just beneath it, waiting. Hannah has been studying the mark for 2 minutes without speaking. She is holding her notepad, but she has not written anything. She is looking at the mark, and then at the guide geometry, and then at the mark again. She says, "The geometry isn't 2-part. I wait. She says, "Look at the center point. Look at where the arcs stop." She traces in the air above the fitting, not touching anything. The 2 arcs don't converge to a single point. They converge to a space, a defined space. She pauses. There are 3 positions in this geometry, not 2. I look at the center mass point, at the space between where the 2 arcs ended. She says, "The mark stopped where the 2 geometries would meet a third one." She looks at where she was standing, then at where I was standing, then at the center point of the unfinished mark, then at the space around the fitting. She does not say anything else. The stone runs its interval. The amber light holds in the center mass point, steady and bright and waiting. I look at the fitting, I look at the center, I look at Marin.